Some fundamentals is changing in the global economy. For decades, business leaders were taught a simple principle: build the supply chains, build the businesses, maximize for efficiency, find the cheap labor, source from the lowest cost producers, optimize your logistics chains, reduce inventory, scale globally. And for a while, this model actually worked. But guess what? Came 2019, 2020 with COVID. Then the semiconductor shortages. Then the Russia Ukraine war. Then the Red Sea shipping disruption. Then export controls globally, the tariff escalations as we have seen in the recent years. And guess what? The AI nationalism. And suddenly the world realizes that something dangerous, something really, really dangerous, it's happening. Something dangerous, it's happening. And
In progress.
the world starts asking a question: was the global economy really global, or was it deeply concentrated? Was it deeply fragile and dangerously dependent on certain areas? So today we are witnessing a slow fragmentation of globalization itself. Not the end of globalization per se, but a political rewriting of globalization. The language has changed: friend shoring, near shoring, reshoring, strategic autonomy, economic security. These are not temporary buzzwords, these are signals of a new economic era. So let me take this moment to define clearly what we are dealing with. The world is moving from efficiency driven globalization to resilience driven globalization. So you can see there is a massive leadership shift. For 30 years, the global economy rewarded leaders who optimized cost. Now it rewards leaders who can absorb shocks. So think about the semiconductors. A massive percentage of advanced AI chips are tied to Taiwan's manufacturing ecosystem. And one of any one geopolitical escalation around Taiwan could disrupt global AI cloud development, as we have seen in recent years. Infrastructure, think about it, automotive manufacturing, and defense systems. And all these can be disrupted simultaneously with one kind of disruption within the economy of Taiwan. So you want to think again about critical minerals. Think about many countries have now discovered that they were dangerously dependent on geopolitical rivalry. Think about lithium, think about cobalt, think about rare earth minerals. Now, governments are redesigning their policies around national resilience rather than pure economic efficiency, like we have always known it to be. Leadership in this current environment that we are in right now, it's becoming radically different, because guess what? The old question was, how do we optimize margins? The new question in this era we are living in right now is, how do we survive systemic shocks? So one of the biggest mistakes that executives today will make is trying to treat supply chain risk as an operational issue. It's no longer an operational issue. Um, it's becoming more of a geopolitical strategic issue, even a civilization issue in my estimation. So you need to look at your procurement teams, not just focusing on them, but you are looking at, do I have geopolitical infrastructure? Um, you have to shift from looking at your logistics dashboard to now looking at your strategic foresight systems, looking at the world globally. So you need to move from just looking at the numbers, your financial analysis, to scenario architect, because let me say something provocative right now. The future CEO must think partly like an economist, partly like a diplomat, and partly like a systems engineer, because we are no longer in the world that used to be. um the modern disruptions, they are no longer isolated, they are connected. You move from economics, get to politics, get to the infrastructure itself. So when you think about cybersecurity risk, it is connected to geopolitical risk. Energy risk these days is connected to AI infrastructure. Shipping risk, as we've come to know in the recent history, is that it is now connected to military conflict, like we are seeing what is happening with Iran right now. Semiconductor risk is really connected with national security. So, and organizations that will fail in this era would be the ones that still operate in that old fashioned linear thinking, than thinking in a non-linear way in this world that we are living in. So what does intelligent leadership looks like right now? What does I believe there are five major leadership dynamics that are emerging in this kind of economy that we are in. And dynamic number one is that for any intelligent leader right now, you have to move, as I indicated before, from efficiency to resilience. That is the old economy that rewarded lean leadership, as we've always known, lean management. The new economy will reward um, artificial and agile intelligence systems. Redundancy is no longer waste. Strategic inventory is no longer inefficiency. So supplier diversification is no longer optional, because guess what? The block the Strait of Hormuz, and if that was your only supply route, your business can collapse within a matter of months. And point number two, when you move from efficiency to resilience, you need to start thinking about from globalization to trusted networks. So you need to think about globalization in a whole new dimension. Countries and corporations are increasingly preferring their trusted geopolitical partners over cheapest producers. So who are trusted allies? Um, so that's the logic behind what we are seeing right now. And the third point, moving from globalization to looking at your trusted alliance. And those of us joining us online on YouTube, we appreciate you. Share your comments, share this episode, and let's continue to discuss as we move forward. So, from predictions to scenario planning, because that is the third leadership shift that needs to happen in this area. Leaders must assume one future, the future that is now probabilistic. It's no longer certain. You must prepare simultaneously for trade wars, as we've seen in the recent years, export controls, as we are seeing right now, AI restrictions, as we are seeing the AI dominant economies coming up with some restrictions, whether you're looking at the US, whether you're looking at China. You can look at energy disruptions, as we have seen. Cyber attacks, I mean, these have been there, but they've continued to escalate, and regional conflicts. And those are the things we are seeing. And the fourth thing that a leader must begin to think out in this era is from visibility to intelligence. Many firms still only understand one tire suppliers, and right now The real vulnerability in this era is really existing at different levels of dependency. So, and the fifth point that any leader in this era needs to be mindful of is you need to move from being reactive to being an adaptive leader. The next generation of leaders it's not going to be the smartest ones in the room. No, we passed that era. The next generation, it's going to be the fast learning leaders, the fast learning generations. So I want us to go deeper right now. And I want us to take a pause and look at artificial intelligence. It's accelerating supply chains, fragmentation. AI, it's really amplifying supply chain fragmentations. And you want to ask me the question, why? Because AI infrastructure itself depends on highly concentrated supply chains. And let me talk more about this. When you think about advanced chips and you think about concentration in Taiwan and a few other economies, you think about rare minerals, you think about cobalt, you think about like the DRC and other countries, which has a concentration of these rare minerals. You think about energy infrastructure and think about what is happening right now with the concentration and the prices that we all seen at the pumps that is affecting everyone. You think about cloud systems and you think about the concentration of chips manufacturing in certain economies. You think about data centers and you think about where are they concentrated. That means what? AI leadership is now geopolitical leadership. I'll repeat that. AI leadership is now geopolitical leadership. And we are moving right now into a world where economic power will increasingly depend on four things. Four things. Economic power in this era will increasingly depend on four things. And it's going to be control of computers, it's going to be control of energy, it's going to be control of data, and it's going to be control of strategic manufacturing. Control of computers, control of energy, control of data, and control of strategic manufacturing. And nations understand this right now. And that is why governments are subsidizing semiconductor production, restricting export of certain things that would give them that kind of an advantage, building domestic manufacturing ecosystems. I mean, if you look at the US and Trump and talking about made in America and bringing manufacturing back. It's all about building the strategic capacity and redesigning alliances around technological sovereignty because we're seeing what is happening right now. There is no simple economics anymore. This is the architect of the 21st century. So, what should a leader actually do in this time? And let me give you a few practical action points. You want to map your critical dependencies. You want to look at your economy and you want to be able to map your critical dependencies. You need to look at your suppliers. You need to look at your energy. You need to look at your data infrastructure, your semiconductor infrastructure, and you need to look at what are your logistics corridors because we know what happened and it's still happening right now with the Strait of Hormuz and what how it has stifled global supply chains in that region, and it's been very devastating for certain nations that are a huge percentage dependent on that sector. So you do not want to rely excessively on one geopolitical region because that can be very devastating when things like stifling of trade corridors like the Strait of Hormuz and others happen. So every organization should now model what happens if a major trade corridor shuts down. What happens if export restrictions expand, like we have seen under the Trump administration? What happens when geopolitical blocs harden. So you need to think about these questions, and AI powered monitoring systems can now identify emerging disruptions before they even escalate. So this is a plus in the era that we are in, because uncertainty and the fatigue around uncertainty is becoming what? A leadership crisis. If you are uncertain, it's if a nation, a business, a corporation is uncertain, this is a leadership crisis. So the leaders who will thrive would not necessarily be the leaders that are less or least pressured. There will be the leaders that are quite adaptive, those ones that are emotionally adaptive to what is really happening on the ground. So history is entering another restructuring cycle. History is in another restructuring cycle. The age of frictionless globalization is ending, and we are entering a new era. And this era is no longer defined by static geopolitical blocks. It's an AI competition era. It's a resilience-driven leadership era. The moments require more than operational excellence. I mean, we have operational excellence has its place, but this moment requires more of wisdom, it requires more of a discernment. It requires more of strategic foresight and adaptive courage, because the leaders who survive the next decade will not be the ones who build the fastest systems. They will be the ones who build the most resilient system. So I want to thank you for listening to the Clarity Mandate podcast. If this episode challenged you to think about leadership in this changing era in a different way, I'd like you to share this with an entrepreneur, with a business partner. And I want you to always remember that clarity is no longer optional. Clarity is a strategic advantage. I will see you in the next episode.